They say you can feel a moment snapping in your chest before it even happens. I always thought that was something poets made up until last Tuesday. It was raining sideways, the kind of storm that seemed angry at the world, and I was sitting in my car outside my own house, holding a half-eaten burrito in one hand and a crumpled gas receipt in the other. I stared at the porch light, flickering like it couldn't decide if it wanted to stay or go, kind of like me, I guess. My name's Curtis, by the way. Not that it matters much. Guys like me usually get forgotten in these kinds of stories. The boring husband. The safe choice. The guy who folds laundry the right way and double-checks if the door's locked at night. That night, after a stupid fight over whether I had embarrassed her in front of her parents, I didn't. By the way, my wife, Lacey, crossed her arms and hissed through her teeth. Apologize. Or leave. She said it like she was daring me. Like she thought she knew exactly what I would do. But here's the kicker. I did neither. Instead, I finished my soggy burrito, wiped my hands on my jeans, turned my phone off, and drove. No destination. No goodbye. Just the engine humming against the howling wind as my old Chevy pushed past the city limits. Hours later, when I finally stopped for gas somewhere I didn't recognize, I turned my phone back on. 67 missed calls. Her mother, her brother, even a couple from numbers I didn't recognize, probably her friends trying to talk some sense into me. And that was before I found out what Lacey was really hiding. Before the hotel receipts. Before the text messages from someone named T saved under work buddy. Before I realized I wasn't the bad guy she wanted everyone to believe. That night was only the beginning. And if you think it's going to get better from here, well, you're as naive as I used to be. The motel I crashed at that night smelled like wet carpet and broken dreams. $29 for a room with a broken lock and a stained lampshade. It felt about right for where my life was headed. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the drip 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 of water from the AC unit, feeling a kind of hollow ache settle into my ribs. I wasn't brave. I wasn't strong. I was the guy who ran because he didn't know what else to do. Every text, every missed call gnawed at me. Part of me wanted to go back, fix everything, grovel if I had to. Tell Lacey I was sorry, even if I didn't know what I was apologizing for. Maybe then I could slip back into the life I thought I wanted. But then, in the sticky dark of that room, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I let myself wonder. Wonder if maybe it wasn't my fault. I pulled up our phone bill online, more out of self-torture than curiosity. Lacey never cleared her history. She thought she was smarter than me, always 2 steps ahead. I scrolled through the call logs and froze. The same unknown number, over and over, at odd hours. Not just late at night, during lunch breaks, during weekends when she claimed to be shopping, even during times when she told me she was out with her mom. A cold realization started worming its way into my gut. I copied the number and ran it through a reverse lookup site. My hand shook as I stared at the results. The name that popped up wasn't one I knew, but the address listed was all too familiar, the same street where Lacey's best friend, Jenna, lived. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just a one-time thing. It wasn't some drunken mistake she would cry about and beg forgiveness for. This was deliberate. This was organized. And worst of all, it had probably been happening for months, maybe longer. I sat there in that moldy motel room, the weight of it crushing me, and realized that the woman blowing up my phone with calls and texts begging me to come home wasn't mourning me. She was mourning the convenience I had provided. The clean house, the fixed appliances, the steady paycheck, the loyal fool who never questioned her late nights at work. And somewhere between rage and heartbreak, I made a decision. I wasn't going to go back. I wasn't going to be the sorry, begging, broken man she wanted at her feet. No, I was going to watch her unravel without ever saying another word. And that would be the only apology she'd ever get from me. The next morning, I woke up in that terrible motel room feeling like I had been hit by a bus, mentally and physically. My mouth was dry, my head pounded, and my phone, oh, my poor phone, was flashing like it had a heartbeat. 78 missed calls now. New texts kept pouring in, one after another, desperate, frantic, even angry. Lacey wasn't used to me ignoring her. She was used to pulling my strings with a single word. I was the guy who folded faster than a cheap lawn chair every time she turned up the heat. Not this time. Still, a part of me hated how much it hurt. I wasn't some stone-cold guy from a movie who could just turn his emotions off. I missed her. God help me. Even after everything, I missed the way she used to laugh at my dumb jokes, the way she used to leave sticky notes in my lunchbox saying she loved me. But now I wondered, was any of that even real? Or was I just convenient back then too? A stepping stone until something better came along? The thought made me nauseous. I tossed my phone onto the nightstand like it was burning my hand and got up to splash cold water on my face. As I stared into the cracked mirror above the sink, I barely recognized myself. Puffy eyes, messy hair, a hollow look that made me look 10 years older. That's when I knew. I couldn't just sit there feeling sorry for myself. I needed answers. Real ones. Not the fake, watered-down version Lacey would give me if I went crawling back. I needed to see it with my own eyes, no matter how bad it hurt. I checked out of the motel without even bothering to brush my teeth, drove straight to Jenna's neighborhood, and parked a few houses down. I felt ridiculous sitting there like some amateur detective, heart hammering in my chest, palms sweating against the steering wheel. But I had to know. I had to see if I was just paranoid or if my worst fears were true. It didn't take long. Barely 20 minutes later, a car I recognized too well, Jenna's blue SUV, pulled into the driveway. And there she was, Lacey, wearing the same hoodie she used to borrow from me on cold nights, her hair tied up in a messy bun, laughing like she didn't have a care in the world, laughing with a man I didn't recognize. Not just any laugh, either. That laugh. The one she used to save for me, back when we were still us. They didn't see me. They didn't even look around. They just went inside together like it was the most normal thing in the world. And that was it. No big dramatic kiss in the driveway. No fireworks. Just casual betrayal. Like brushing your teeth or checking the mail. I sat there for a long time after they disappeared inside, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. This wasn't a mistake. It was a routine. And somehow, that hurt worse than anything else. When I finally drove away, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't punch the dashboard. I just felt hollow, like something had been scooped out of me, and all that was left was a shaky, pathetic shell. But even in that pit of misery, a tiny ember started to flicker. Maybe, just maybe, I could turn this pain into something useful. Maybe I didn't have to be the sad fool everyone expected me to be. Maybe I could disappear so well, so completely, that when they finally realized what they lost, all they'd have left would be regret. And believe me, regret was the only gift I planned on leaving behind. The next few days were a blur of cheap motels, gas station coffee, and endless scrolling through our shared memories. I slept in parking lots sometimes, too broke to keep renting rooms, too proud to call anyone for help. The world kept spinning, but I felt stuck, like I was sitting on the side of a highway watching my own life speed past me. Every ping of my phone twisted the knife a little deeper. Messages from Lacey started changing tone, from desperate to angry to icy silence. Then came the posts. I made the mistake of checking her social media one night while parked outside an abandoned strip mall. She was already spinning the story. Photos of her with friends, drinks in hand, wide smiles, captions like healing red heart adhesive bandage, and surround yourself with those who truly love you. There were vague posts about toxic relationships and freeing yourself from negativity. And her friends, our friends, once, were eating it up. Heart emojis, praise, messages about how strong and brave she was. Meanwhile, I sat alone in a beat-up truck that smelled like fast food and regret, watching my reputation disintegrate in real time. It's funny, when you're the one quietly hurting, no one notices. But when the person who betrayed you cries loud enough, suddenly you're the villain in everyone's eyes. I guess that's how it always goes. Still, I couldn't bring myself to answer her calls or messages. Part of me was afraid of what I'd say. Part of me was afraid of what I'd hear. I knew if I heard her voice, that voice that once could calm me down with a single word, I might forget everything I'd seen. I might start believing her lies all over again. I wasn't ready to forgive. I wasn't ready to fight. I was barely ready to breathe. But life has a cruel sense of humor. One morning, after a night of tossing and turning in the back seat, I woke up to find my truck boxed in at a convenience store parking lot. And there she was, Lacey, standing by her brother's car, arms folded, sunglasses hiding her eyes, wearing that same old hoodie like some kind of shield. She had found me. She didn't say anything at first. Just stared, like she couldn't believe how far I had fallen. Like she expected me to be waiting with open arms, ready to accept her back without question. Instead, I rolled down the window, said nothing, and waited. Finally, she broke the silence. "You made your point, Curtis," she snapped, her voice trembling. "You've embarrassed me enough. Get in the car. Let's go home." Home. Like that word still meant anything. I laughed. I couldn't help it. It bubbled up from somewhere ugly inside me, bitter and hollow and broken. Home, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't think you know what that word means anymore. Her jaw clenched. For a moment, she looked like she might cry, but instead, she turned on her heel and stomped back to her brother's car, slamming the door so hard it rattled the windows. As they drove away, my phone buzzed again. Another message. Another half-baked apology. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Because somewhere deep down, I realized something important. Lacey wasn't trying to fix what she broke. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was just sorry she didn't get away with it cleanly. And for the first time in a long, miserable while, I didn't feel like the weak one anymore. I didn't stay in that parking lot long after she left. The weight in my chest hadn't lifted, but it had changed from raw sadness to something closer to clarity. I wasn't sure where I was heading anymore, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going back to being someone's background character. Not again. I drove aimlessly through small towns and backroads, staying in places that didn't ask questions and eating food that tasted like cardboard. It sounds pathetic, I know. It was. But I needed time to figure out who I even was without her controlling the narrative. Time to remember who Curtis used to be before he became just Lacey's husband. During those endless drives, the memories would hit me like flashbacks from a bad movie. How she used to pick fights over nothing and somehow twist it into being my fault. How she would go out for girls' nights and come back smelling like a brand new cologne. How she started locking her phone, whispering during late-night calls, smiling at texts she would hide when I walked into the room. And the worst part? I noticed it all. I just pretended not to. Because admitting it meant admitting that the woman I loved didn't love me back anymore. One night, I stopped at a cheap diner off the interstate. The kind of place where the lights buzz overhead and the waitresses call you Han, even if you look like you haven't slept in days. I was halfway through a plate of rubbery scrambled eggs when I heard a familiar voice 2 booths over. Lacey's brother. Talking loudly on the phone. Talking about me. I froze, fork halfway to my mouth. I couldn't make out every word, but I heard enough. She's lucky he left. Seriously, the way she was sneaking around, it was gonna blow up anyway. Curtis should have seen it coming. Everyone else did. Everyone else did. That one phrase hit harder than any punch. They all knew. Her family. Our so-called friends. Maybe even Jenna. They knew she was cheating. They knew she was lying. And not one of them thought enough of me to tell me. Not one of them cared enough to warn me. I paid for my sad excuse of a meal and left without even looking back. In the parking lot, I stood under a flickering street lamp, staring up at the dark sky, and for the first time since this nightmare started, I let myself really feel it. The betrayal, the humiliation, the gut-wrenching loneliness. I wasn't just mourning the loss of my marriage anymore. I was mourning the loss of the life I thought I had. It had all been a lie. Every Sunday dinner, every vacation, every whispered, "I love you," before bed. It was all just a story they told me to keep me playing my part. And now, standing alone in a greasy parking lot while truckers sped by on the interstate, I realized something that should have been obvious a long time ago. If nobody cared about me enough to tell me the truth, then maybe I didn't owe them a single damn thing in return. Not forgiveness. Not explanations. Not even a goodbye. Days started blending together after that. Without Lacey, without the fake friends, without the lies propping up my life, there wasn't much left except the noise in my own head. Every morning felt like waking up in a house that had already burned down. Nothing to save, nothing to rebuild. Just ashes. I drifted from town to town, picking up odd jobs when I could, sometimes fixing fences, sometimes cleaning gutters, always for cash under the table. I told myself it was temporary. That someday I'd figure it all out. That someday I'd stop feeling like a ghost trapped between the person I used to be and the person I was supposed to become. But then something happened that snapped me back into reality harder and faster than I was ready for. One afternoon, after a long, miserable morning patching a stranger's broken deck, I pulled into a grocery store to grab a sandwich. I was halfway across the parking lot when I saw it. Lacey's car. Same dent in the back bumper I always promised to fix. Same worn-out sticker on the windshield. She was there. And not alone. I should have walked away. Should have minded my business. But curiosity, or maybe just old hurt, pulled me forward. I slipped inside, keeping my head down, pretending to look at the produce section while my heart hammered against my ribs. There she was, laughing, holding hands with a man I didn't recognize. Not just holding hands, clinging to him. Clinging to him the way she used to cling to me when we first started dating. He was tall, good-looking in a slick kind of way. The kind of guy who probably never had to wonder if he was enough. The kind of guy Lacey used to swear she didn't even like. They walked right past me, so wrapped up in each other they didn't even notice. She looked happy, genuinely happy, and for a moment, a stupid, pathetic part of me wanted to run after her and ask what I had done so wrong to be replaced so easily. But then I remembered the motel rooms, the text messages, the laughter in someone else's driveway. I wasn't the villain in her story. I was the disposable character she discarded when the next shiny thing came along. I left the store without buying anything, hand shaking, sandwich forgotten. Sat in my truck, head against the steering wheel, letting the ache roll over me in waves. I wasn't angry. I wasn't jealous. I was just tired. Tired of fighting for people who never fought for me. Tired of pretending like closure was something you could get from someone who never even cared. That night, I made another decision, the kind that changes the trajectory of your entire life without you even realizing it. I blocked her number, blocked her brother, blocked Jenna, blocked anyone remotely connected to the life I used to live. I deleted the photos, wiped the old text threads, unfollowed the accounts that kept pulling me back into her orbit. It felt like cutting off a limb. It also felt like finally stopping the bleeding. I wasn't magically better. I wasn't suddenly strong. I still cried myself to sleep that night, curled up under an old jacket in the back of my truck like a sad, broken mess of a man. But for the first time, I cried for me. Not for her. Not for what we lost. But for the man I was finally starting to realize I deserved to become. Weeks passed. Maybe months. Hard to tell when every day looks the same. I moved further south where the winters didn't bite as hard and picked up work painting houses for cash. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept me fed, kept the gas tank full, kept the silence from swallowing me whole. I lived out of my truck most nights, sometimes splurging on a seedy motel if the weather got too rough. I told myself I didn't need more. I told myself I was healing. But deep down, I knew the truth. I wasn't building a new life. I was hiding from the ruins of the old one. There were nights, late and ugly, when the loneliness pressed down so hard it felt like it would crack my ribs. Nights when I almost unblocked her number. Nights when I wondered if maybe being miserable together was better than being miserable alone. I hated myself for even thinking it. I hated how much of me still belonged to someone who had discarded me like a pair of old shoes. One especially cold night, after a long shift repainting a strip mall, I caved. I didn't call her. I didn't text. But I did look her up. Just once. Just to see. Big mistake. There she was. Smiling for the camera, arms wrapped around that same guy from the grocery store. An engagement announcement. Glittery ring front and center. Can't wait to spend forever with my soulmate, the caption gushed. Comments flooded in, congratulations and heart emojis and gag-worthy hashtags about second chances and true love winning. Second chances. For her. Not for me. I stared at that post until the battery on my phone died and the screen went black, leaving me face to face with my own reflection. Hollow eyes. Scruffy beard. The ghost of a man who once thought loyalty was enough to build a life on. It wasn't even the engagement that hurt the most. It was how quickly I had been replaced. How easily she erased me from the picture. Like I was a bad draft she finally got right the second time around. I spent that night in my truck, parked behind a gas station, gripping the steering wheel like it could anchor me to something real. I realized something important somewhere between the cold creeping into my bones and the tears drying on my face. If I stayed angry, she still owned me. If I stayed broken, she still controlled me. If I kept living in the wreckage she left behind, then she had won. And damn it, I was tired of losing. I wasn't some tragic character in her love story. I wasn't a villain in her fairy tale. I wasn't even a footnote in her success story. I was Curtis. I was still standing. Barely, but standing. And for the first time since the night she gave me that choice, apologize or leave, I realized I had chosen right. Maybe not cleanly. Maybe not heroically. Maybe not the way movies would show it. But I had left. And every miserable, broken, gut-wrenching moment since then had been a step away from her and a step closer to finding myself again. Maybe it wasn't the life I wanted, but it was the only one that was mine. It's strange how life starts piecing itself back together when you finally stop clinging to the pieces that cut you. I didn't wake up one morning magically healed. There wasn't some epic moment where the pain disappeared like smoke. It was quieter than that, more like the slow, steady sound of rain cleaning dust off a windshield. Barely noticeable at first, then clearer, then undeniable. After that night behind the gas station, I made a choice. A real one. Not out of anger. not out of spite, but out of something deeper, a stubborn, tired little piece of me that still believed I deserved better. I got a real job fixing up old houses. Bought a beat-up camper trailer from a guy who was upgrading. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I parked it on a cheap plot of land near a sleepy little lake town no one had ever heard of. I planted a little vegetable garden out back. Fixed the leaking roof myself. Woke up every morning with sore muscles and dirt under my fingernails, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't hate myself. I didn't wake up wishing I could rewind time or beg someone to love me again. I started going into town sometimes. Quietly at first. A coffee here, a grocery run there. Eventually, the locals started recognizing me. Waving. Smiling. Asking how the camper was holding up. It was the kind of small-town kindness I hadn't realized I was starving for. One afternoon, while trying to fix the busted radio in my truck at a gas station, someone knocked on my window. I turned, half expecting trouble, but instead found a woman about my age holding jumper cables and a sheepish smile. Her name was Mary Ann. She needed help starting her car. I helped, of course. Old habits die hard. But what surprised me was how easy it was to talk to her afterward. No pressure. No fake charm. Just two tired souls swapping stories about crappy cars and small victories. We started running into each other more after that. A cup of coffee. A walk by the lake. Long conversations under big, open skies about everything and nothing at all. She didn't know my past, and for the first time, I didn't feel the need to bleed it all out just to be understood. She saw me, not the broken man crawling out of the wreckage of a bad marriage, not the walking cautionary tale, just me. And slowly, piece by piece, I started seeing myself too. One evening, sitting on the tailgate of my truck watching the sunset bleed gold and pink across the water, Marian nudged me and asked, "Are you happy?" I didn't answer right away. I looked out at the water, at the reflection of the sky, at the little garden patch I had planted with my own hands, at the woman beside me who didn't owe me anything and didn't expect anything but my company. And then I smiled, not because everything was perfect, not because the pain had vanished, but because I finally understood something simple and true. "I think," I said, voice rough but steady, "I'm getting there." And for once, that was enough.